turn that on. We're talking about integrating research, and if you've been in my class before, you know that I focus on a couple key words that I repeat often enough that they probably just become nonsense to students. But they're important words. One of those words is integrate. So I'm not talking about integration in a political sense. I'm talking about integration in the sense of joining two different elements together. What are those two elements that I'm talking about joining together in writing of your research paper? Talking about integration. The research and your ideas, or your claim, actually, the main point. So, Jordan, tell the class again what your claim is.
The U.S. should reduce frontiers with other nations, foreign and domestic.
Excellent. We want to keep ourselves out of other people's affairs, right? Now, you have specific research focuses, right? What's one of your specific research focuses? Libya. He has a specific instance, that instance being Libya, and he has a general claim, that general claim being the way that the United States should conduct itself in international affairs. He must link the two. Now, some of you will look at that and say, well, the link is obvious. Not necessarily. And besides, it's your responsibility to make sure that the link is exceptionally clear. And by clear, I mean explicitly written. We're not writing poetry here. We're not writing creative writing, any sort of short story or fiction. We're not writing something indirect or implicit. We're writing explicit argument that is exceptionally clear. And that means the link between your evidence and your main idea must be clear as well. And students often drop this point. So, the principle. All research, all of it, whether quoted or paraphrased, must link clearly to a topic, sentence, or a claim. So that means it must either link clearly to Jordan's topic about U.S. international conduct, or it must relate to a subtopic, a topic sentence of a paragraph. But somehow that's got to work. Let me show you a practical example of this. So let's imagine that your research question is, how have cell phones harmed people's lives? You've got that question, and you're not quite sure how exactly that question might be answered. You have some ideas for the answer, but you're still sort of in the stages. You've conducted two pieces of research. One is an article from CNN.com. It's entitled, "Get Your BlackBerry Out of Our Bed," about people trying to remove themselves from dependence on digital toys. The other one is also an article from CNN.com entitled, "Clinton Put Down the BlackBerry at Home," about Senator Clinton. This was when she was still senator, not Secretary of State, recommending that parents spend less time with digital toys and more with their children. You should be at this stage. You should have articles, and you should be thinking, how exactly do I deal with these articles? What do I do with them? So I'm going to take both of these articles and throw them into one paragraph. I mentioned earlier in some class that your density of research will be about 1 to 2 citations per paragraph of your research paper. So I'm going to work on that model of 2 citations per paragraph. Those two, I decide, after I've read them and I've looked at my research question, that those 2 pieces of evidence show this. People have allowed their personal connections with others to suffer from their obsession with cell phones. Main idea? Suffer. So I now have evidence that people's connections, their personal connections, have suffered, and that evidence is given by those CNN.com articles. Okay, all this is well and good, and I'm sure you figured it out already. The point is how exactly we write about it. Here's my sample paragraph. I'll read it for you, and then I'm going to analyze it piece by piece and show how I didn't write this just intuitively. I wrote it formulaically. That means I knew this piece needs to go here, this piece needs to go here, this piece needs to go here, and then I end up with a paragraph. When I write something like this, I write model examples. I don't write creatively. I don't look for inspiration on high. I follow a formula that I know works. Many people have become so obsessed with emailing, texting, and talking on their cell phones that they have allowed their personal relationships to suffer. Because of cell phones, even when people are at home with family, they ignore them. Instead, they communicate with people elsewhere through cell phones. Dee Dee Flannery, a 31-year-old public relations consultant from Rochester, New York, says, "I've been known to answer the phone from the shower, and I call the bathroom my husband's conference room." Even Senator Hillary Clinton noted the problem in an online town hall meeting about parenting. She stated that parents often ignore that time does not mean quality time, and that these parents should spend less time on cell phones and more time talking with their children. Somebody tell me what I did? Can somebody see the pattern, the formula, break this down before I do it for you? What are the different portions of this paragraph? Let's start easy, right? What do all paragraphs have? Taylor, what are you thinking?
Like a topic sentence.
And what is my topic sentence?
How people are obsessed with like email and text and stuff.
Very good. So Taylor's identified that sentence 1 is my topic. Topic sentence, easy enough. If a previous paragraph were lying above this, I might include some transition in there as well. But I'm writing this by itself, so I'm not including any transition material. I've just got a topic sentence. All right, Emma, you were raising your hand. Maybe you can answer this question for me. What is sentence 2? Not quite, not yet. But it's a good guess, Emma, because introductions to research do exist in this paragraph, but that one's not it. Taylor, help her out.
It like transitions to like a more specific thing, talking about family stuff.
Okay, so it's an expansion on the topic and a specification of the topic. Good. 2 and 3 both work together. So Emma, when you're thinking transition, you're on the right track. Taylor gives it a more specific name, and that is specification. I'm going from a general suffering and obsession to the cell phone. I don't communicate with people who are in front of me because they're not on a cell phone. If somebody's standing 5 feet away from me, we're on a cell phone, I might talk to them, but otherwise, no. What else? What else is going on in this paragraph? Come on, you're all sitting there silently. Claire.
Then you give like a direct example.
Okay. Let's use a different word than example. What's the word that I gave you? Remember, I talked about 3 different ways in which you could discuss an issue. Which of those 3 ways are you talking about when you talk about example? Anybody remember the first one was assertion. It's one of those 3. Bueller. Oh man, nobody gets that joke? Thank you. Good God. Illustration, folks. I like to use this word, Claire, because example does not carry the impact of showing, of depicting, and I like illustration. So yes, I have this sentence number 4 is illustration. It's not proof. It is illustration only. It shows a personal connection. And what have I done to emphasize that personal connection in my illustration? Thank you, quotation, give somebody's voice. You want a personal connection? You want an illustration? You want somebody to connect with your writing clearly? Give them somebody's voice. Make them feel like they are listening to a real person. And there we have it. And that's a single sentence citation. Nothing fancy there. What else do I have? Okay. Which word, Mackenzie, provides transition? That's right. Sneaky little transition there. Remember, transitions are powerful, yet subtle and small when they're used properly. Even Senator Hillary Clinton noted the problem in an online town hall meeting about parenting. It's a transition and an introduction of my next piece of evidence. And then, of course, I won't belabor the point. Number 6 is that evidence. What's the difference between number 6 and number 4? Taylor? Very good. I could have quoted 6 as well. I could have quoted Clinton. And it wouldn't have been bad to quote Senator Clinton. However, in this case, I wanted to experiment with it and show you that you can do both. What's the impact of my Clinton evidence? How does it have a different impact from the evidence in number 4? Oh, true. So it does actually give me different content. Talks about children rather than married couples. That's correct. So the content's different. Austin.
Give somebody that like everybody's going to know. So
Keep going.
Senator Hillary Clinton, they have a direct connection, therefore they
So it's familiar, a little bit more than familiar, Denise. Authoritative, thank you very much. So Austin, you're correct, it is familiar, and Denise, you're correct, it's familiar and authoritative. Now I know that Senator and now Secretary of State Clinton stirs some ideological controversy and fire, but regardless of that, she's still a Senator or Secretary of State, still an authoritative voice, and one which adds that authority to the paragraph. Zoe, you had your hand up.
Yeah, okay, for the, when you illustration part, we don't need like a transition.
It's going to depend. The transition, if I wanted to place a transition between number 3 and number 4, what would that transition be? At the beginning of sentence 4. Simple transition. Instead, they communicate with people elsewhere through cell phones. Somebody help Zoe out? What simple transition might I place at the beginning of sentence 4? No? For example or for instance. Because as Claire noted, this is an example. It's an illustrative example. So you could provide transition. However, Zoe, I judged that the connection between 3 and 4 is so obvious that I don't need to. Now the connection between 4 and 5 is not as obvious because I'm shifting to something else. If I just said Senator Hillary Clinton, it might be too abrupt. Just the word even says I'm talking about somebody else. Okay, make sense? Cool. Yes, Dakota.
For like sentence number 6.
Yes.
You didn't use quotes, but you have to use like the same kind of wording to make sure you get the same tone across.
Sure. Excellent. So Dakota's referring, I think, Dakota, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're referring to another point of integration. And let me talk about this in a different color pen. What are my key words in my topic sentence? Keywords, power words that express the content. Obsessed, very good. Obsessed and suffer. Where was, there we go. Obsessed and suffer. Obsession leads to suffering. That's the key idea of my topic sentence. Can you tell me where either those words appear again or words like them, close synonyms, appear again? Anything close? Anything negative? Because both of those words are ignore. Okay. We've got ignore right there. Do we have where? Ah. Any place else that we have negativity implying this obsession and suffering? Yeah, I would say that's where I was going. Just the word problem also. Dakota's right that in order to make sure that your paragraph stays on topic, you must either indirectly or directly restate the key ideas of the topic sentence or claim. The idea of negativity, of a problem, of suffering, must sort of pepper its way throughout this paragraph. And I've done this before for students, sort of color coding short writings where I say, okay, green is the color of your controlling idea. Now let's see how often it appears. And then students will find in a paragraph that they have green twice at the top and twice at the bottom, and there are 7 sentences in between that have no green whatsoever, not even indirectly. And they'll say, oh, now I see it. My language doesn't reinforce my main idea. This does so indirectly, and it does so indirectly throughout. So we don't really have a large dry spell of green. But Dakota, you're correct, and I think that's what you're talking about. Even when you paraphrase, you must paraphrase in such a way that reinforces your topic sentence. Is that what you were going on about? Okay, good. It's good writing. And it doesn't have to be overt. You don't have to use the word obsess and suffer 7 times in the sentence in order for somebody to get your point. You can indirectly make it, but use words that carry that negative connotation and everything will be fine. Notice anything else about the paragraph that you should be aware of in writing a research paper? Thank you, the in-text citations. Zach, talk about the in-text citations for me a little bit. Where do you notice that they're placed? How are they punctuated? What do you think that I'm doing with my works cited page? Excellent. So as soon as I have finished with my research, I include my citation. Very good. That's one quality that we know that I must use. Somebody tell me something else, some other rules that I'm following with my in-text citation. Last name, capitalization. I'm using the and that MLA asks for when I have multiple authors. Taylor?
Isn't the in-text citation supposed to be inside the period?
Did I make a mistake? Which I want to do. Trust me, you guys earn extra credit for it. Yes, Leslie? Ooh, that's a good guess. Good guess. And actually, that's usually what happens, but not necessarily what has to happen. But there's something else different. See, Leslie immediately said, what's different between this one and this one? Right. That is different, but the paraphrase versus quotation does not dictate the difference in punctuation. There's something else going on here. Okay, use your brains. What else is different? Well, one's authoritative, the other one's personal, and that probably wouldn't lead to a difference in punctuation. One's a quote, the other's a paraphrase. That could lead to it, I'm telling you it doesn't. What else is different? Pretty simple and superficial. Oh, true. So there's, once again, different quality, but the quality of the citation does not lend to a punctuation difference. Punctuation differences come from structural differences, grammatical differences, writing differences. I'm sorry?
But just because like there's quotations on one?
No.
Because the second one's more direct and the first one is indirect, but then it's talking about something.
Nope, you guys are all going to content. You're all going to content. Me, I'm a structuralist. I think in terms of grammar. How many sentences are there in the first? In the first evidence, the first piece of evidence, one sentence. How many in the second one? 2. In the second piece of evidence, 5 and 6, 2 sentences are my evidence. In the first, only sentence 4. So I have 1 versus 2. That's what leads to the difference in punctuation. I know many of you are sitting there saying, huh? Yeah. I know it's kind of confusing. And this is one of the confusing rules of MLA that I usually don't hold students accountable for because it is difficult to master. But it is how you're supposed to do it. The punctuation differs, and I'll give you the rule. If the only thing you're punctuating is this one sentence, then this citation must be inside that sentence. By placing it inside the sentence, I am telling you it cites this and only this sentence. I like to think about it as sort of inclusion or closing a door and asking something to come in. It says, come on in, you belong here. You belong in this one sentence and this one sentence only. If I place the period here, as I've done, I'm saying Mapes only belongs to this sentence and no other sentence. Leslie?
What if the last one like comes outside the period? What if that's not at the end of the paragraph?
It would still go outside the period.
So then you would just start the next one.
Correct. Correct. Because if I were to include this citation inside that period, I would be telling my reader only that sentence is the citation. Only that sentence is the evidence. By placing it outside, I've said more than just that sentence. Multiple sentences are that citation. Dakota.
Isn't the even isn't that sentence just kind of introducing?
It is. So I know if I'm looking at this and somebody might ask the question, okay, Mr. Clarkson, if this says, if the punctuation says this is multiple sentences, do I know how many? Do I know how many? The answer is yes. How do I know how many? Everything that's left, and I go back to the transition. The transition shows when that evidence starts. So transition right here shows evidence starting. My period here also gives me information that multiple sentences are cited by this. I understand. Like I said, it's kind of confusing. It actually kind of makes sense. And what happens is the person who knows MLA format, knows how to read it, has just received a complex amount of information. It's very accurate and very specific, all by the placement of a period. And that's how MLA should work. Dakota mentioned something else, the introduction. Hillary Clinton noted blah, 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 blah. That introduction introduces the most important piece of information that I have, which is the identity of Clinton. This piece of information introduces the most important piece of information that I have, the speaker of this quotation. When you are integrating research that you are using in your paragraphs, often you will want to include not simply a speaker for an illustration, but the actual authoring agency, publication, organization. Can somebody give to me a piece of research that they're using that they find to be authoritative? Maybe it provides some cool statistics that they're working with, something that they consider the organization itself to be authoritative. Maybe you're going to a government agency. CNN. Let's think not media publication. Although I can deal with that if nobody comes up with anything else. Nobody has any authoritative research bodies? All right, then I'll deal with Jordan's CNN. Jordan, tell me about what your CNN article presents.
I looked up like money standard debt flows from Libya already.
Excellent. So since the government may not have released some of this information directly, although they probably have, but you're getting it from CNN, how would I introduce that evidence? How would I introduce Jordan's evidence? Jordan has read an article that gives death tolls about American lives lost so far in the campaign against Gaddafi in Libya. How do I introduce that in a sentence? In this previous sentence, I wanted to introduce my evidence by saying Senator Hillary Clinton, because that's really important to me. How can I introduce Jordan's evidence in such a way that I get CNN on the table? That introduction is simple and authoritative. Jordan is saying, I didn't get this from Bob's bargain basement house of data and statistics on foreign wars. I got it from one of the most respected news organizations in the United States, according to CNN.com. What other information could you place into the introduction?
The date that it was reported.
You can place author in there. You can place title of article. And date would actually be pretty useful in Jordan's case because we're talking about really recent developments and developments that will change day by day. So we have, according to CNN.com, on do I need an in-text citation? Now, immediately, if you're on the ball, you would think, well, Mr. Clarkson, I need to see what? Sorry? Possibly. How do I know whether or not Jordan needs an in-text citation? Come on, it's a simple rule about in-text citations. What always goes in an in-text citation? Not necessarily. What is this and what is this? And I know you're going to look at me like I'm crazy and say it's the author, Mr. Clarkson. I know, but what else? What? First piece of information in the works cited page. Thank you. So if that's the author, great. If it's a title, fantastic. Does Jordan need an in-text citation? Why, Zoe? Oh, true. We could have other CNN resources. But Zoe, let's do some prediction and some inference. In Jordan's in-text citation, what is likely for this one to be the first piece of information? The CNN.com article. What's likely? The author. Because CNN.com usually attributes its authors. If it hasn't attributed its author, then what piece of information will be first? I'm sorry? No. The article title. CNN.com will never be first. CNN.com will be second or third, depending upon what information you have. So if this is all I see, I automatically say, nope, there's no in-text citation there. So if Jordan has written, according to CNN.com on March 30th, 2011, the U.S. has lost, and then he finishes his sentence, in parentheses, I expect to see either the author title or the article title. But, as Mackenzie has said, you could include that information in the sentence. According to CNN.com, let's change this. Let's work with a different introduction. What instead? Okay. Do you want just Smith, comma? Obviously, I'm asking that question. Well, yeah, if we had first name, I'm just using Smith because it's my generic author name. What other information do I need in there in order for my audience to listen to me? The U.S. has lost, so on and so forth. Now do I need an in-text citation? No, why not? If you stated the first piece of information in the works cited entry in your sentence, you don't need an in-text citation. It's redundant. Why would I do this and then do this? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I understand it makes sense. It's redundant. It's over information, but you don't want to clutter your paper with information. MLA, even though to you it seems cumbersome and ridiculous, and trust me, connected to or compared to some citation methods, it's actually very streamlined and quick. But to somebody who uses it, we know that this is the least amount of information that you need. It's not redundant. It's not excessive. So if I have, according to Smith of CNN.com, comma, then I don't need the Smith at the end of the sentence. It's all good. Okay. So each and every paragraph should work in this way. Go through it again. You've got your topic sentence. That topic sentence should have a relationship with your claim. And that may be your claim, or it may simply be a sub-point of your, driven by a research question. Research with quotation provides nice illustration. Research with paraphrasing, mix and match. Use whichever you feel is appropriate. A nicely sophisticated skill of a writer is to know when I want quotation and when I don't. I want quotation when I want to hear somebody's voice. I use quotation here because I wanted to hear this person's voice. I wanted a personal impression. That, I don't need Clinton's personal impression. Also, I didn't want to clutter my paragraph with more than one quotation. Maybe more than one quotation from the same person, sure, but not multiple quotations from multiple people. It's going to become a little bit confusing. Claire?
Do you want to do this for every paragraph, like in a paper?
You're going to find that often you will write this densely.
So won't that become repetitive though? Like,
Not if your ideas should be different.
yeah.
So remind me of your claim again.
The United Nations should take a bigger part in like keeping peace.
Right. You will have paragraphs that will define what an international criminal court is, definition. You will have those providing history on what it has done. You will have some predicting what it could do. You will have paragraphs talking about why the United States may not have joined up so far. So you'll have multiple different subpoints, and each paragraph will be different. So it won't be redundant. Make sure that you include your citations and try to punctuate them properly. Learn this now and impress somebody next year. So somebody we'll be on the ball with citation, and we'll see that you're punctuating properly, and we'll probably be fairly impressed with you, and you will distinguish yourself from the pack. So remember to do both. Please flip around, quoting and paraphrasing. Use them when appropriate, and if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. I'll also have an opportunity to take a look at your constructive drafts. That means the main body of your argument. So if you're quoting something that shouldn't be quoted, should just be paraphrased, I'll let you know that. And here are some rules that you might want to jot down on why you would quote as opposed to paraphrasing. Just a moment, Zoe. So number 3 is what I was talking about with the Flannery quotation. You're developing an emotional response, a personal connection. I want an illustration that emphasizes the harm of this cell phone obsession. 2, if the voice really adds authority. So I could have thrown Senator Clinton's voice in there. And now it's not me speaking, it's a leading national government official. However, I said I made the decision not to because I didn't want to clutter. Also, if you find that it's really tough to paraphrase because the way that somebody said something is perfect, then just quote them. Occasionally that happens. Occasionally your source will say something indirectly developing your idea, and sometimes they'll say it directly. And when they say it directly in beautiful language that's clear and to the point, just quote them. There's no need to paraphrase. Yeah?
So every now and then, would it be acceptable to have 2 quotes in one paragraph?
It could. In that one, I didn't want to use 2 quotes because I'm shifting speakers, and not only am I shifting speakers, but I'm shifting type of evidence. So there's a big shift, and that's why I didn't want to confuse with quotation.
So would it count as 2 citing in text quotation
Mhm.
if you use the same source, but like different parts of that source?
No, it would still be one source, one citation. However, if you're worried about my rule on density of citations, if you're using one citation multiple times, that's probably dense enough. What I'm worried about is that your paragraphs will be largely your own words and ideas. I know this is going to sound harsh, but folks, I don't want to hear your words and ideas in that way. What I want, the creative intellectual work that I want out of you is the assembly of research, right? It's not the research itself, because you don't have the authority, you've not done the research. What I want you to do is reading on something and then assembling all that research for me. That's what a research report is. So your genius comes through in the assembly and the argumentation, not in the actual material itself. Zoe, you had a question. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh, absolutely. In fact, you're talking about homelessness in the U.S. and you don't have a quotation from a homeless person, then I would almost find that negligent. Yeah, you could tell that they were interviewed if you find that that has an impact. Yeah, absolutely. Any information that you find is necessary to understand that quotation, place it in the sentence. But if it's not necessary to understand they were interviewed because it's obvious they were interviewed, then leave it out.
And does this all have to be like internet research, or can I
No.
do someone myself?
No, it does not have to be internet research. I just find that the last time I took a college degree, which 6 years ago, I finished my last one, I think, maybe 8. The final paper was basically written by me at home in my pajamas. This is the way that research works now. It works on computers. Even when you go to a library, often you're just accessing databases through computers. And so I wanted you folks to be familiar with that. But old styles of research are still valid. You should use them.
So I could interview.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Primary source documentation from interviews is fantastic. I just don't require you guys to go there. Okay? Any last questions? No? Tomorrow, when you come into class, you'll have an in-class writing to complete. And that in-class writing will take you the class period because it requires you to read some sources. Don't worry, they're just regular popular journalism, so it's not heavy sources. But they'll ask you to read some sources and basically write a paragraph, actually a couple paragraphs, just like the cell phone one that I just constructed for you. So come into class tomorrow ready to do that, and you'll be good to go for spring break.
So are there any evaluations that you tomorrow?
Yes, well, 2 evaluations and 1 research report. So 3 documents. 2 are evaluations and 1 is that research report. That's it.